my business. I'm sorry.
I think most of it might come up on the screen.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It is, let's see, what day is it? Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, and this is a meeting of the City of Topeka's City Council Public Health and Safety Committee. This morning, what we have on deck is just basically a two-part agenda. After we approve the minutes from our July 30 meeting, we will have an update on the Digital Equity and Inclusion Partnership, aka broadband, and primarily we'll then spend our time on working on consolidating recommendations from public hearings about our Change the Culture of Property Maintenance initiative. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, let me have why doesn't everybody introduce themselves? We don't have that many people here today. Starting with the committee.
Christina Valdivia Alcala, District 2 Representative.
Neil Dobler, District 7.
And I'm Karen Hiller from District 1. Then
Chief of Staff for the City Manager, Bill Cochran.
Brent Trout, City Manager.
Director of Property Maintenance, Mike Haugen.
and in the back, we have Lieutenant Badel from the Police Department, who's over property maintenance, and Chief Duke from the Fire Department, and Liz Toyne from the council staff. And on deck, we have Monique. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. Monique Laude, Director of Community Engagement and Ombudsman for the City of Topeka.
Okay, and we will bring our next guest up in just a minute. Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July 30th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Any amendments, corrections, additions? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Approved. Moving on. Item number 3 is our update on Digital Equity and Inclusion Partnership. Scott, I'll let you introduce yourself and give us the update.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Scott Seagowan. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Topeka Public Schools, and I'm here on behalf of the Digital Equity Partnership. Is sound coming through okay?
No, not very well.
No.
Dylan, can you help with the sound? Yes.
Will it help if I keep talking? Are we getting better yet?
Not quite yet.
No.
Monique, just to clarify, is sound coming through on your end? Thumbs up? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Is everything a little better now?
Pardon me?
Can you,
Okay. Looks like we need a little work in the back. We couldn't hear Monique very well either, so sorry about that.
that's okay.
Do you have anything while we're waiting? Okay.
I can hear you guys well, so if somebody else did want to go, maybe Monique could give her, oh, well, you couldn't hear Monique either.
We're going to roll into the whole property and premises thing here when you're done.
Okay.
They showed up about 5 minutes before.
We can hear him okay. I mean, he could get started.
Go ahead. We're just going to listen real hard.
Okay, and if you'd like, I'll talk louder. I was a teacher, so I'm not afraid to do so. So I wanted to give everybody kind of a quick update on our Digital Equity Partnership. Basically, we met briefly earlier this month to talk a little bit about where we are and our next steps. One of the things that we're going to continue working on, obviously, the city has interviews scheduled for the 2 positions that we've received grant funding, and I believe Monique's going to talk a little bit more about that interview schedule, and then we'll give further details on that at a future meeting. Then the other thing I wanted to report on is that our team, our internal team of partners, is putting together a handbook to be able to provide for the digital navigator and the technical navigator positions, so that those 2 individuals who will be helping the members of our community will have the resources at their fingertips that they need in order to be able to do so. Other than that, I would like to share that this is really, really hot off the press news, because we just received it yesterday, that the Topeka Public Schools has received additional funding from the FCC to be able to continue the initiatives that we're working towards continuing, being able to provide some additional hotspot resources and be able to continue funding the individual family connectivity that we've been providing in the homes for the past year. We're going to be able to continue funding that now through June 30th. And so I'm very excited about that. That means we can continue to do some of the heavy lifting for some of the homes in our community that attend Topeka Public Schools until we can get them situated in such a way to find another opportunity. So I'm excited about that. That was originally supposed to end December of last year. We've managed to continue that effort twice, and so we're going to keep doing it as long as we can do it.
Scott, could you clarify how much money that is and how long this will last?
So the services that we've been providing will continue through June 30th. The allowance that the FCC has set aside for us matched our request grant of, I think it was 1.3 million, and that's covering the hotspots that we've been issuing to families, and that's covering the services that we've been providing in the home through Cox, as well as a few other things that we included in that grant. So we're really excited. That literally, we just got that news yesterday.
And is that, for lack of a better term, enough?
It's enough to keep doing what we've been doing, but that's not enough for the longer term plan that the partnership is looking at. For the longer term plan that the partnership is looking at, we're looking at strategies to help not just Topeka 501 student families, but the whole community. And so we're continuing down that path for those that Topeka 501 can't serve. Does that make sense?
Questions? Bill?
Yeah, sorry. I had some inquiries from like some neighborhood churches and stuff like that over in the Sixton Leland area and places like that, and they were curious about how are they able to get the broadband and capabilities and all that stuff as well, or?
I'll tell you what, if you wouldn't mind sharing that information with myself and Monique, the school district isn't likely to be in a position to be able to do something with that, but we can certainly look at what options we do have available. I don't know the extent to which the FCC is open to organizations, but we will definitely explore whatever avenues we can for them.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll get you that information. I do know that all the kids that would be going to that church and stuff would be 501 students.
Yep. And we will definitely help them find their connectivity and get connectivity in their homes.
Okay. And I know they do like some after school stuff and things like that, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you'll share that information with me, I'll make sure that they get the resources that they need.
So regarding the hotspots, is that just to maintain the ones that you already have, or has that got capacity to add hotspots?
Well, we actually received a rather generous donation from T-Mobile of, it's not a capacity to add hotspots, but it's a capacity to add service to the hotspots that T-Mobile donated to us. And so we at this point have plenty of hotspots to serve our student population who are not being served with the in-home services that we've already provided.
Okay.
So we should be in a good situation to help our families, and we want to use that as a springboard to be able to help families that are not necessarily affiliated with the 501 school district.
That's really great. Other questions of Scott? Scott, did you say Monique has a report as well?
She does, but I did have one more ask, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yep. I just wanted to remind the committee about the administrative policy that we presented at the previous meeting, and just to see if there are any questions that anybody has about the administrative policy. I'll go ahead and take those questions now, and then I have a request from the partnership.
We had that on the agenda just as an update from you, so I think to get you reasonable feedback on that, we probably need to have committee members expecting to look at it before the meeting. If we can
Okay.
put that on the next agenda, it'll be a better conversation.
That's not a problem. Well, we'll be happy to answer any questions that arise from committee members between now and that next meeting, and then I'll just hold off my ask until the next meeting then.
Okay, so that's a good idea. So if you want us to have a look at it and then direct questions to you, or to you and
Yeah, that's
Monique,
fine.
how does that go?
You can go ahead and address them to both of us. We'll make sure that they get in front of the whole partnership.
Okay,
And then that's all that I had. I'll be glad to take any questions about either the broadband initiative or the partnership's focus on digital equity and inclusion.
I don't think so. I guess if I don't know if I'm stepping out of our venue or not. I know that the city manager had put a number in his proposals for ARPA money, but I don't know that it was targeted to any particular use. And so whether we need to have more information as we move into ARPA conversations.
It should end up being similar to what is being done by the grant that we received. So it should allow us the funding to be able to continue that beyond the grant, so that we have the financial, or not the financial, excuse me, the technology literacy people that can help and so forth, so that that program continues once the grant's done.
And when you're talking about the grant, you're not talking about his FCC grant, you're talking about our startup.
The $250,000 grant we received.
Okay. Councilwoman.
Also, this is, I guess this is part of the conversation, but I think it's going to come under an ARPA request, is that the Digital Equity Community Hubs project that initially, I think it was, I had started conversation with Lazone, and then he really started moving on it. We have a number of partners that we are working with right now, and the outline for the project, along with detailed cost, is going to be finished up by today, and I will be able to bring that, share that with everyone. And again, not being familiar with exactly how the ARPA is going to happen, I would say, we have LULAC as a partner, East Topeka Senior Center, we have CRC North, we have IBSA, we have Pappin's Landing, and Topeka Youth Project. And I think we might have at least 3 or 4 other partners that have all come together to put this request in for some infrastructure, but some already have infrastructure and are just looking to help pay for some minor additional costs. Salvation Army as
Okay.
well. So I'm not the one that's writing it all
Sure.
up. Lazone has been helping a lot on it as well, but I can have that out later this afternoon.
Okay.
That'd be great, and then we can dig into the regulations and make sure that it applies as an allowable project.
Okay.
So that we can be put on the list to decide as to whether or not it can be funded. And then, once we know that it can or can't be funded, then if it can be funded, it can be put on the list as a potential project, and as you guys go through your deliberations.
Got it.
Well, and I really think at this point, the council has decided to have a work session on ARPA sometime in the next couple of months, I guess. So the fact that you've followed up on the FCC money and have it continuing, for us to make a responsible decision, what the council in general has wanted to do is make strategic investments with what we have. And everything's bubbling all over the place, so any information that you can provide, and maybe you already have talked about it in your task force, but of money that you expect to continue. We're all trying to look not just at today, but look down the road at how this is, how our community is, like we talked about, it's going to become a utility, right? And so how is the community going to be served? And does it appear that there's already some things emerging that will take care of that or not? You knew about the FCC money. And as much as we can know where things are emerging, so that if we've got one-time dollars, we may spend them on something else, let's say. Maybe they're needed to plug a hole, But maybe if any sector, not just broadband, is taken care of, then we have plenty of utilities to do and other things, for instance.
No, absolutely. I can tell you that the FCC grant is a one-time thing. This was the emergency connectivity fund that it was for the 2021-22 school year only. And it only applies to schools and libraries and is being administered through E-rate as kind of like an additional.
Keep talking real loud. Don't forget.
Oh, I'm sorry. The emergency connectivity fund is a one-year thing, and that was for the year 2021 to 22, which is why we'll be able to continue the services that we've been doing until June 30th of 2022. I am not yet aware of any continuing funds, although in some earlier conversation with the Department of Commerce, the broadband office, they are going to be looking at some strategies for digital literacy and would like the Topeka team to be involved in them setting some of that up. So I don't know that that's going to result in additional funding. At the moment, the last known funding source was the FCC for us to be able to continue through June 30th. So as far as the school district is going, that's pretty much where we will be, is June 30th. And hopefully either there's a more continuous path for the citizens of Topeka at that point, or there's a continuation of some of these programs that's done at the federal level. But at this point, that's all we're aware of.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
They fixed the volume.
Halen, is nobody back there to change?
No, so our computer back there went down yesterday, and we just got a new one. We weren't able to establish an audio connection to control that, and I've turned it up as much as I can out here.
Okay.
Not a whole lot to do as of right now.
All right. Thank you. Well, Scott, I think we're wrapped up with this topic then. I just can't tell you how much we appreciate Councilman Dobler getting this whole thing going. And you and your leadership and all that you and the team have done so far. So we'll
Well, it's a team of leaders that are working together in this community, and we're going to solve this crisis, that's for sure. And if there's anything that I can do to help, you be sure and let us know. We will work together and get you guys the results you need.
Okay. Well, it looks like maybe I skipped Monique. Monique, do you have something you need to add for us, or are we good?
No, I do. So I'll try to shout so you can hear me. So technical nav interviews are taking place this week and next. Our goal start date is November the 1st.
Monique,
Are you able to hear me?
Monique, you're freezing up. We need to, if it's going to work at all, you need to maybe slow way down and talk loud.
Yes.
Sorry. We can see you now again.
That's
Oh, boy.
Maybe we need to invest in better equipment.
okay. Can you hear me now?
We heard 2 words.
I'll share next month. It can wait.
Okay. Well, we got a whole sentence. Try one more time.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Talk slow.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll talk slow and loud.
Yeah.
We're wonderful. We're interviewing for both part-time positions this week and next week. Our goal is to extend an offer and have the navigator start November the 1st.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is we had 2 part-time positions. So you're interviewing for both or just the digital one?
Or both.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks
You're
for
welcome.
struggling with us here.
Sure.
All right. Thank you again, Scott. You're welcome to stay with us or depart.
I'm gonna go on to another meeting, but I really appreciate your time today. Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right, Monique will probably stay with us for the property and maintenance as well. Okay, our goal today is to do a work session to try and pull together all of the input that we got. We, just for those who are watching, not today, because I don't think anybody is watching today, but if someone watches later, we did not meet in September because Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and I led a series of 7 two-hour programs for public input on ideas and strategies for how we could address changing our culture of property maintenance, both in terms of the system itself and the enforcement and the code, but also out in the community. And in summary, we had a phenomenal experience. All 7 of them had different people attending and rich and complete conversations. They filled the 2 hours, and each one seemed to emerge with its own separate kind of a theme. And as we had hoped, I think almost to the emerging ideas, they were things that we had not thought of before, didn't have down in our advanced notes, and it's incredibly invaluable for us to consider moving forward. The notes in various sizes of type, as posted on our on the website, if anybody wants to see it. If we need to look at it today, we can, but otherwise later. There are, what's XL? 47 pages of notes. So what we asked people to do prior to this meeting, I, as chair, sat down and tried to consolidate a little more of a master list by trunking the ideas together from the whole series. And then we also have, I asked people to turn in a list of 10 or whatever number worked for them. And we have some submissions from, and what I did on my list was to pull out, we asked people for ideas and suggestions. Some of those minutes that you'll see discuss problems and so on, and of course, in time, some of them are related to one another. So I slimmed those out. Some of them we had talked through with question and answer, and they were ideas that might be worked up at some point, but perhaps weren't ready to go right away. So the big long list has subheads that are manageable. And we got lists in from Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, as well as from Monique and LaToya Burnett on the staff. Are there any other people that brought lists to the table that I don't have yet? That's okay. One of the things that we also have, that we had at the beginning of this process, was a response letter to our 4 challenges that was put together by staff, in particular Mike and Brent and Andy, I think. So we have that for reference as well. We wanted to go through these fresh, more community-based ideas. Ideally, pulling out of them a workable list of initiatives that can be started immediately. If we can pull some things basically together. I don't know how much people feel we can do it in the meeting. I tried to give us a jump start. Do you want to go through the ideas? Do you?
It's just so huge. I'm sorry. I'm
It
trying
is.
to be
It is.
professional.
It is.
When you ask for people's opinions, they're very willing to give them, and it creates a long list.
I almost feel like, I mean, we can definitely start now, and I think it's a good time to start now, but it's almost like we need to have things on the wall and, get it out to where we can see it more visibly, and I don't know what that entails. I don't know if that means us having some kind of, work session because there's so much on here.
There is, and I, because we were finishing them up only recently and wanted to be ready, so we've got these summaries. If we want to try and work them together ourselves today, we do want to keep it moving, so I don't want
I
to kick the can.
understand, I understand.
I grouped them by administrative changes, things that were changes to programs we already have, but I might not have grouped them the way somebody else would have. Community initiatives. Christina did a great job of grouping them by the subject matter that we used in the presentation.
So what's the best way then to
Well-
categorize them and pull out the most salient ones that we believe that we are going to be able to work on the first year?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I comment on is that there are a couple things that we haven't touched, and Mike and I were talking earlier that he had a meeting with legal prosecution specifically recently and talked about, their system and understanding why they were doing some things, because based on some of the comments, there's been some concerns about how legal handles these cases. I think that given the concerns, even in Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala's comments about the courts being out of touch with realities in the neighborhood and so forth, I think it would be good, and it is one component that we have not heard from yet as a presentation or explanation of the processes that are handled. We have a kind of anecdotal comments regarding how it's handled. I definitely think that that's one that I see as a need for another committee time, is to have courts, have prosecution come and explain their basic process and then why they take actions or not actions regarding recommendations. So I think that's, my opinion, I think that's something that's needed.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, there's the whole legal code, interpretation, policy and procedures that all, I see us lumping that together as a task. And for me, because it has so many moving parts to it, even though I'd like to solve all of it by next month and make recommendations, it seemed that one might be, as a package, what we would recommend as an initiative for next year. To process through. And I know that, and then the issue is, how could we best do that? And Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, why don't you go ahead and report in a little bit, because she's gone ahead and investigated a little more about the consultant that we learned about through the video that she found.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces going on right now with that. When Karen and I and the committee started working on how to develop the strategy for moving into the community meetings, one of the videos that we both decided was very relevant to use to stir up people's ideas as we went into these meetings and encourage them to view the video. It was by Karen Black with May 8 Consulting. And I was just so impressed with her presentation on strategic code enforcement, what she does in areas of, under May 8 Consulting, sustainability, neighborhood revitalization, blight, vacant housing, et cetera. And I reached out to her and have been having conversations with her, and she is very interested in the possibility of coming in because she is a lawyer. She did a fair amount of years as a fair housing lawyer, but she's been in this realm for over 20 years. And as thinking about how to approach this and not knowing about costs and exploration of costs, my thought was we continue to talk about partnerships. And to me, and I think to probably the rest of the folks on the committee, but I do not want to speak for them, partnerships are going to be integral as we help solve the many issues that we're looking at. That extension into community as becoming a partner along with us, I think, was a very powerful first step. So I had conversations with Greater Topeka Partnership, and they are excited about getting involved in this and helping in any way that they can, including shared cost for bringing Karen in as a consultant. And there is also talk about, and I don't want to name them right now because I haven't heard back from Matt, one or two other possible large community, very well-known community entities that we are trying to get to come on board, not only for the idea for sharing of cost, but a sharing of the vision that we are trying to bring beyond this committee, beyond city council, beyond the neighborhoods, into the city as a whole. And so did we share with everybody a copy of what I sent to you and Neil this morning, this email that came from Karen Black about a very broad, bullet points of what she can help us address. And I do believe, after having had a number of conversations with her, and she knows that we have gathered all of this community input, I also think that she can be of some assistance in helping us along with this. I mean, we understand that we're the most important part since we live here, but I think she is definitely open to that being part of what she would look at when she comes in, if she comes in. She's talking about research and data analysis being phase 1. She's talking about phase 2, conduct viral stakeholder interviews. Phase 3 would be draft assessment memorandums. Page 4 would be present and discuss final memorandum with stakeholders to help define a specific action plan with responsible parties, funding, and detailed timelines. Obviously, she goes into more detail. I'm just reading from her bullet points. But I think that it's something that we really need to consider. I think it's a very exciting possibility to have her come on board as we work to make this a reality. And her investment definitely is a commitment to communities and neighborhoods in underserved areas.
Chair.
Yes.
I really like this idea. I think finding an outside expert sometimes that can come in and sort through what we've got in front of us, as well as bring experiences from other municipalities, makes a lot of sense. I don't know what we're talking about in terms of funding her, but I'm sure we can figure that out, particularly if GTP is willing to partner. I'm sure we can find partners. I think it's a great way to move forward. Fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I? Go ahead. I thank you. Now, I think the thing too is that she understands what a pivotal time it is. Her and I have had extensive conversations about that, about the affordable housing study that we have in place, about the initiatives that we've been working on in here, about the leaders and community that are coming forth and seeking, something different. The relationship that the city has with information that comes in through realtors, et cetera. So she was very cognizant, as well as all of the moving pieces around that are circulating here, and understands as well that this is a key time that we're looking at. A kind of I don't want to say a once in a lifetime time, but maybe it is. And for something different. And I agree with you, Neil, in that the dialogue that I've had so far with GTP, and I think that Matt spoke with you as well. He said he had a conversation.
The other day we were going.
Okay, well.
We ended up talking about other things that were popping.
I was very taken with how excited he was about the project and them partnering in that way, that I think is sometimes a missing element for them to get deeper into these neighborhoods. So,
well, and they know that that's a key part of the redevelopment planning. Something that you didn't mention specifically, again, for people that are listening. I too was very impressed with. I'll get you, Mike.
Okay.
With her presentation, but she is a senior fellow at an Institute for Urban Innovation at Drexel, which is part of the University of Pennsylvania system, and that is just top notch. And those eastern cities have dealt with this more than we have here in the Midwest, although she's consulted all over the country, as far as I know. I suppose if we put it out, it would need to be an RFP, but Mike's been involved in looking for help for a long time, and I hope that this sounds good to you. And with that,
Our department would welcome this. This sounds exciting to us as well. When reading her proposal, she talks about vacant, neglected, and abandoned only. I would suggest that it expands into our current practices of our housing issues as well. This is a great opportunity to leave that off the table, which I know this is just an initial, but to leave that off the table would be missing out on an excellent tool that she can probably come in and say, hey, this is what you're doing good, this is what you need to do better, this is what you're doing bad. More than
I
welcome.
think that she is separating vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated, and that what she's proposing includes all, but it's worth checking.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
hope that it would be all, because that's a small problem compared to the whole city.
Correct, thank you. Thank you for that.
And I think,
Clarifying, for sure.
Mike has reviewed that, and a lot of some of the concepts and things that she talks about, we have done some of that type of thing here. So I don't think we're like starting from scratch. I think she's going to identify.
Not at all.
The 40 to 60 minute, I watched it. I was pleased that we have either implemented everything in there or we've proposed it and it just didn't make it past council or whatever. It, like a landlord registration, I think she talks about that. Just didn't make it. So that's okay. We proposed it. So I watched it and I was going, oh, this is pretty cool because we're doing 70%, or if we're doing something, we're not doing it quite the way she suggested, or that, we don't charge $7,000 for a vacant house. But those are all things that are on the table to talk about to improve. And
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it would really help, she would help with us refining our ideas and
Yes.
our processes.
That was the
to
sense
make
that
sure
I had.
that we're on doing everything the best way that we can. We might be attempting some of these things, but we're not hitting the mark. And this would be an outside person to analyze where we're missing that part. And so that would be beneficial to us.
And I liked with the different examples, some of which, we've talked about or kicked around and had different opinions on too here, but she also clarified that each community is different and there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a puzzle piece and you need to look at what you have. And that's my phrasing on what she said, but that's something that really appealed to me. Are you aware, Mike, if from your trainings and things like that, is there a list someplace of other people like her if we were to send out an RFP, or is this really? I
don't believe there's a list. There's definitely people out there that portray themselves as experts within the field. Many of them I've went and heard speak, and they're usually speaking of their geographic area and what the laws are that apply to Pennsylvania or whatever. And I'm watching it with enthusiasm, but going, I can't do what you're suggesting because of state law in Kansas. Mm-hmm. So I've made suggestions for the training that they put together for the state of Kansas, a best practices of each type of issue, because we do it different than Overland Park and Olathe and Wichita and all that. Someone's doing it great. Someone's doing it terrible. We should put them all together, find out which ones are great, and then say, hey, state, let's try to be uniform when we can, when it fits, and let's do best practices for these types of enforcements. And it hasn't taken off for their training sessions and their seminars yet, but that's what I would like to see, to learn from the rest of the state and the rest of the country, what's working.
It's been clear to me from years ago when I was going to those conferences, but also from your feedback that we, as Topeka, we've just got some big city issues and we're not getting those answers right here, the ones that we need. And so this, what you found. Well, okay, so.
One other comment I would add to that
Please.
list of things that could be provided by this outside source is that if there are law changes that are needed in the state of Kansas, she can clearly identify them, and then we can draft language for changes in the law and start advocating from them, get other cities that maybe would be able to take advantage of those changes as well and start building some support around those kind of changes.
And I think she did
to the
make
law.
reference to that, Brent, because she is a lawyer, and I think that like even if eventually getting Shawnee County delegation, you know, involved in some capacity, if something needs to be changed at the state level or our lobbyists?
I think so. I mean, the last couple times, well, I'm thinking of a couple, maybe right after I first got elected, it was, we've got this problem. I think you were still at the police department at the time, Mike, and it was like, okay, well then let's go. And we all showed up, and everybody on that committee knew that it was already in there and we didn't, and it was really embarrassing, and we all went home, and it was like, okay, we need to be better prepared before we go after this again.
Oh, yeah.
But the disconnect that Mike has talked about, for instance, between abatement orders and then whether we have a responsibility to abate if we sent certain kinds of notices, either figure out how to get around getting stuck in that section of the law, which maybe we could do all by ourselves, but anyway. So if what we want, we also have talked about the language changes on vegetation that are already underway, and we need not only that policy-wise, but then the strategy on how to phase it in, which involves that citizen component that we've been talking about elsewhere. Do you think that we could tackle that vegetation one with both sides of it, the legal and the figuring out the community engagement thing, as a separate but related item, or should it wait and be part of this policy advice?
You're changing and recommending changing an ordinance, and it's a lot bigger than just changing it. So
That's why I'm throwing it out.
Yeah, if it's moved out of there, I'm okay. I run into properties that fit where I can't do anything, but they need addressed. So I understand, but I also need to you all to know that if we do make any type of wording change, that comes with staffing and equipment, because I can't clear a backyard. I have a chainsaw.
Alternate,
So,
yeah.
but that's a big enough one. The reason I'm
That's what-
asking,
yes,
because
it's-
we all know that, is taking that one and how to sync it up with the other part of the TMC,
Correct.
figure out how to phase it in enforcement-wise and how to phase it in community-wide. Is that enough of a package of itself that if we were, let's say, going to spend the year working with her in 2022 to do that overall, could we start on that vegetation one right away as its own package?
I think so, because I think we have some research that's already been done by Mary Feeney, and then get Amanda and Mary to link up and figure out what changes need to occur and write
We've
it.
worked hard enough on getting all those ideas about how people could help. I hate to delay.
Well,
that
and
if
I
we
think
can figure out how to get it started.
You could decide an implementation date. I mean, you could approve the ordinance in 3 months, but determine that it goes effective January 1 of the next year or July 1 of the, 2022, 23, 22. And so you can determine an effective date, which then would give staff enough time to gear up to address the issues that are expected to be impacts on their departments so that they can effectively manage, enforce that new change. And by creating the law, you'll create the parameters that then staff can gear up related to equipment needed to purchase, allocate that in the next budget, those kind of things.
Well, again, it depends on how we want to tackle it and whether we want to, one of the reasons we spent the time out in the community was to begin the motion toward the community owning this and community helping take care of that rather than just hire more staff
Sure.
and buy more equipment at the city level. And so that was part of the piece of
yeah.
exploring with that one.
I'm in complete support of what you're saying, but the reality is, if the community doesn't step up and maintain it, you look at me and say, why aren't you doing it? It's in the code. So that's where I'm just saying, provide me the
conversation
support.
we're having.
You provide me the support and the equipment and the manpower that I need ultimately. I
Right.
don't know how much that is. It might be one person and a lawnmower. I don't know. But if you're willing to commit to providing the support if that ordinance comes in, I can see the need for it, and it's fine. But if we write it, and then it comes back on me, and I got a lawnmower and a weed eater, we're not enforcing it. So that's...
In terms
that's
of deciding it today, I guess what I'm looking at lumping some initiatives together. If that policy one is one where we would look at having a consultant and creating a team that works on that for probably at least 6 months next year.
Well, I
Good.
think really just having our legal department determine what changes need to be made in the ordinance.
For
Bring it to the
vegetation.
For vegetation, bring
Right.
it to the committee, see if it's meeting the target that we've identified, has a change in the vegetation laws. We've got a pretty good understanding of what we'd like to see. Let's see if legal can write it, and then we can approve it at the committee, at your committee level, and then make a recommendation to consider
So,
at the governing body
We
level.
keep that one as one that we'll do soon,
Well, and I
deal
think,
with people we have.
and from my personal opinion, it gives you one that you can start now. You don't have to wait on. It gives you the opportunity to get one piece of this that we've all been talking about for months going, rather than waiting. We don't really need to wait on this one. This has been a decision that we know we want to do.
Right.
There's been a key point to all of this discussion. Let's just get going on it.
Well, and if a third one then, again, we have to just slice and dice these however it fits, but if the third initiative would be the whole issue of community engagement in vegetation, trash, mowing, a whole package of ways that we can address these differently so that people take ownership of it, and it would stray into the vegetation, but it would also go into that every day that we've been working on.
It's going to be huge.
Right.
Because there'd be so many parts to
But
help
for
make it
instance,
happen.
if that one is a reasonable one, and again, it ties even back into dreams and having the communities be much more focused on their own priorities and so on and helping themselves, but also if that one could be keyed out of the community engagement staff in terms of who the point people would be at the city level. We haven't had that private conversation, so I'm having to ask you.
Yeah,
We've talked
well,
about
I
it
think
before, though.
that's something that I can talk to Monique about and what's entailed there. First, with
Either that or come up with the strategy and look for a partner or partners. One of the things we talked about that popped out at the very first meeting was the idea of converting perhaps the money that has been set aside in the budget this is where I see the money coming from, for the inmate crew that we don't have, and converting that into a summer mowing program. And developing a youth summer job program that is for mowing. And we set up a system, this is how it's emerged for me, and a system whereby there's a certain fee that crew would charge for a different size of lots, and maybe for some, at least basic cleanup or trimming and so on. This could be run by we could bid it out. There are nonprofits that are oriented toward youth or community engagement that might be interested too
And
to manage it.
Multiple partners, though.
But if we set up the cost per mow or per cleanup in a consistent way, and you've already done that before, then begin to work out a community-wide campaign, both to get people engaged with it, to get volunteers and so on, but to say to the people who have been our offenders with mowing and trash, listen, let's talk mostly mowing. Here's how much it costs, and you can get a season package, or you can pay by the mow. You got to pay in advance if you're the local people, and we'll come mow it for you. We have a summer mowing program. We'll just do it. But we could use that same crew like we've used the inmate crews at that same rate for abatements if we have to get it done because someone has run out their time. And use that same program. We talked about it on the side that if one of the problems we have with rental properties is that nobody has a lawnmower and nobody knows how to use it, maybe we would begin to recreate a generation of young people that know how to mow a yard and maintain a lawnmower. But anyway, there were just some layers to that idea that came out. But if the city used it as well, it could be a self-sustaining summer work program for a nonprofit or even a for-profit entity that we wouldn't have to run it ourselves at all. But could be a great, in our youth, we've wanted to do, people on the council especially wanted to do summer programs for youth, and those have sort of drifted drifted down, and this could refresh something that we sponsor, or even just guarantee, because if there's enough revenue that it pays for itself, fine, and so on.
But I just issue some concern about using youth and machinery, because there's state laws that prohibit that. I'm not going to tell you those because I don't know them all, but I'm pretty sure it's 18. And when we're going onto properties, we're forcing our way onto that property through notice, and then we are sending a volunteer onto a property of a person that doesn't want them there. So a lot of our concern is the safety of the people that are mowing. And that's why we have well-trained people doing it, that they know what to do when a guy comes out with a gun, which happens every year. They come out and go, get off my property. These guys know, we're gone. They leave, immediately call the police, come back with the police.
Obviously, there'll be exceptions like that, I'm sure.
Yes. yeah.
But our concern in partnership with you and with those goals is to get those yards mowed so that nobody has to call code at all, and
That would be
and people
beautiful.
mow it themselves rather than you having to do that kind of intervention.
So what I'm looking at for next year, because this year we're still 130 cases backlogged on mowing, but can't knock the crews. It's COVID several times have hit. All sorts of different things happen. It's just bad year. 2 years in a row, bad years. But to look at contractors, and then we can pull out the ones that we feel are safe and manageable, and then put them out like at blocks of 10 and say, these 10 are out for bid, and allow a contractor to bid them, knowing that they're repeat violators, they're vacant properties, they're properties that, that nobody cares. Or when I say nobody cares, I mean the person's not going to come out and attack the contractor. We know we have plenty of those properties. So if I got 132 right now backlogged, if I could pull 50 of those in blocks of 10 and put them out to bid, and they bid it and get it and they mow it, it's done now and I'm not backlogged anymore.
Well, and I think one of the things that we heard during these meetings, and I hear what you're saying, one of the things that we heard a lot, and it wasn't just from Lazone on how to utilize, people that are in the Washburn Tech East program, et cetera, and, fathers that, may be part of a business that they're trying to get caught up on back child support or whatever, and so the need for them to, to make a living, et cetera. But you were hearing that, but we're also hearing within the communities about having the businesses or having these mowing services within the communities themselves or within the districts or the neighborhoods themselves. So I think that, and I don't know if there's any way to really make that workable. What I'm saying, like if there is 4 houses down from me, there's Johnny's mowing service, and him and one other person can go and maybe do 10 or 15 of those, but that money is staying there in Oakland. It's generating and it becomes part of his business as well. I think that we have to stay cognizant as much as possible to keep that, however we're going to manage to keep that within the certain neighborhoods, because I think that was something that we heard at Hillcrest as well.
Well, and the ideas of, there were, and again, this is helping us to maybe group these ideas that we have here and revisit, but there were ones about having businesses who hire mowing done for their business property anyway, to just agree to add 3 more sites a year that are in their area. If somebody, just add it to their mowing contract that they have, of having churches adopt, either X number of mows or X properties. Really a comprehensive dive into getting the community to help each other. And it's different than you taking care, and it's a companion thing that ideally with that goal of reducing that gap, if there's less complaints and you don't have to come out and write up and all that, or mow it and send bills that don't get collected, then that's one initiative that marries up with yours, but is different.
It's fantastic. If you can make that work, that's fantastic.
I think it's going to be a challenge, but, we were talking about even NIAs had people within their NIAs that were willing to go help and mow the lawn of an elder that couldn't do it anymore before it even got to the point, again, where it comes to
As
you.
this is talked out, our code says 12 inches. They probably need to be addressed at 8 inches.
Well,
Which would,
that's the deal too. I mean, part of it was, let's say that it's a narrow lot, it's $25 to mow this lot. And so if they don't do it, you end up doing it maybe twice during the summer, $25 to mow it, but then a $100 administrative fee and a fine on top of that. So it costs them $400. You get this skinny little lot done twice in the summer with all the duplicates in it and so on. If the case can be made that instead for that same $400, you can get it mowed 8 times this summer, pay us up front, you don't have to worry, you can ignore it just like you did before, but it's going to get mowed. You know, to begin to market the fact that that some things were available and how you could save money by mowing it more often, but not having to deal with nice Mike and his buddies.
if you can figure out how to make that work, I love it.
We thought so.
I mean,
So what I'm seeing then is maybe if the vegetation change, getting the technical done is number 2. If number 3 is community-based strategies for addressing mowing, vegetation, and trash, and that those might subdivide then into training and small business and entrepreneurial strategies, like if that's A, let's say, and B is the community-based direct assistance, that maybe we could pull all these ideas together and group them even better to address that. And it could easily take more than just community engagement staff. I mean, somebody on the staff needs to be kind of coordinating it.
It will.
We had also, I know one of the other things that's in here is the idea of going ahead with appropriate disclaimers crafted by legal of putting kind of an unlimited listing on the city's website of anybody in town who wants to do mowing, anybody in town who says they'll do handyman work for you, some way of having a central list. It came up more than once that some sort of central list. Now, I know that when we've done other lists like that, the city, kind of like they do on Facebook, I think, like if you get a really bad reference, they yank you. Enough of these services have come up with rules that we could copy. Figure out some way.
To do business with the city, you have to have requirements and then you register. It's not a hard thing to do to get somebody registered, but they got to have everything. They got to be bonded, insurance, and all this.
Right, which is not going to happen at that real grassroots space.
But
Well, through an organization, it might.
there are plenty of people that are LLC that are mowing that have 2 lawnmowers. I'm not talking about the big guys. I'm talking about just, if you start looking, you will see 40 trailers going down your street every day with guys with lawnmowers, and those are independent people that would sign up and be willing to get into the contract. I would like that, but my suggestion that I volunteer, because everyone wants to raise their hand to volunteer, and then when it's time to show up, they don't. So that's not an impossible task to do. That's an easy task to do, to get a list. But I would recommend if the city's going to sponsor that list, that we require that they have all the things. So when they throw a rock through a window of a guy driving down the street, it's not coming back on the city. Just a suggestion.
Do you think, and any answer is okay, that either of these programs, working with training, small business and entrepreneurs, or the community-based, would be better done by contracting with a community-based organization rather than having the city directly do it, or does it matter?
You're asking for an opinion here on something I've done no research on.
Okay,
And
that's okay too.
when I go back and I go, well, if you put it on the city, that's just one more thing for a city employee to do. And when I look at it and go, Mike, it's yours, that is a big job to coordinate and run that. So I'm going, ship it out. But that is me doing it without any research. And,
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, because we've come a long way since we started these conversations, and in a good way.
The complaints are still going to flow through the city, so
Absolutely.
there will need to be a city component that goes along with it. But that could be as easy as see-click fix complaints that are forwarded on to the appropriate organization that we've hired to handle it. And the other thing is that if we look for this, there may be an organization that doesn't exist now that would be formed if we said this is what we were looking to do. Somebody may say, well, that sounds like something I'd like to be a part of. I'll form an organization and we'll do it.
Well, and we have there's just a lot of movement right now. It's dizzying almost, but, a couple organizations that are beginning to really build capacity. Related to that, there were a number of ideas about being able to work with our local hardware stores and lumber yards and so on to be able to get tools to instead of having a tool bank that we run or fund again, but to be able to rent equipment or get materials. That would need to be set up, but then also managed. Does that fit in one of these that we've just talked about, do you
I think it does, and I think that that's also where you start adding, the private partnership mix in the mix. And then obviously for a later conversation is with these partners, along with the city, along with the community, how do we tie all this together and start again down the road, promoting it for a powerful campaign, to get people excited and revved up, hopefully.
Maybe that's a third piece under
Yeah.
this community-based strategies. And again, even if we're going to have a consultant on the big policy and process stuff, that could start immediately because we have to do that locally with people we know and build that. Get back to it and figure out the particulars, but that'll help us group some things. Or some other, from all this discussion, groupings that we could, let's see. You had neighbor, you've got the public-private on yours. Oh, we wanted to have a process to look at I think it would be separate from having Karen Black come. We had a discussion of changing the permitting process for people who were rehabbing a home that they were planning to live on but couldn't live in it at the time. We have discovered a catch-22 that, and I sent one of them back to you today, but we've had another one a couple weeks ago. It's a difference between what code compliance saying you've got to fix it, and development services saying we won't give you a permit unless you're a licensed contractor. If you live in the home, you can work on it yourself, but if you don't live in it because you can't right now, they wouldn't give people permits. Yeah. And then we also have some people, we had two guys at Garfield who are doing rehab, they're doing flipping, they're doing rehab, they're really committed to purchasing properties in the neighborhoods, the low-income neighborhoods, and making a difference, and they're even willing to do infill, but having to go hire 10 different people to do some core work. And so we were pretty sure that out of this, we made a commitment, I think, that we could get a round table together and talk about whether there can be a shift in, I don't know whether it's just a waiver or a different interpretation on the permitting. They were all willing to be inspected, to pull permits and have their work inspected, but trying to get action. Brent?
I think we got to make sure we talk with our trade unions before we go much further on this.
We talked to them, we told them that straight up when we were talking in the meeting, and they said this is work that they aren't interested in doing, but absolutely we would have to.
I think just make sure that we do that. We know what happened when we had the last utility policy change that we had and dealing with the trade union.
Right.
Yeah.
But it
Just
seems
want to make
that
sure
that
they're at the table
roundtable
when you do
is
that.
another critical one, and it's separate from the code
And
compliance.
we promised.
I just want to make
And we
sure we don't
promised them.
put a landmine under our feet with it relates to this. Let's just make sure we got it out of the way right from the beginning.
Right. Well, we've learned a lot of lessons in the last year on that stuff, right?
Yes. But I think you're right. More than likely, they're going to say that they're okay with the DIY attitude with regards to the renovations of some of these properties.
And these two that we were talking to, they have full-time jobs and they maybe do 1 or 2 houses
Right.
a year.
Yeah. It's not a great deal of number, but just best to
Well, and we talked to them.
establish that parameter that the unions are going to be okay with.
And we said, the reason we have codes is because people in the city decided they wanted people to be safe and to
Yeah,
have any work that
exactly.
was done meet certain standards. That makes sense.
Yeah, we know we want electrician done right, so we don't have fires.
Right. And again, they said they didn't mind. So it would be maybe some sort, I don't know if there's a new reclassification of licensing.
That would go through development services.
Right. So it wouldn't be on your neck, but it all ties in though to what we're trying to do with the neighborhoods.
Agreed.
So that would be at development services. Okay. Oh, and working on, this could be under the community basement, but the whole issue of the dump fees and being able to have volunteers or anybody get stuff hauled out to the dump, the $75 fee seems to be a real barrier, even if people are just going to go ahead and clean up the stuff somebody else dumped in their alley. Is that one got enough moving parts to it that it should be one just on its own? Or is it part of this other cleanup one?
Well, I think the number of moving parts would be contingent on how many ideas we see for reducing fines or ways to work around the fines, or whether you involve NIAs to help do that and do it more often. Maybe they could use NIA funds if we know it was going for, dumping. I mean, I don't know. I think I would trust your opinion on that, but I think that I really like the idea about could we look into the possibilities of NIA using some of their money and then have more events, if we can get our NIAs more reinvigorated, to have dumping programs, right? Where they pick it up and take it.
Yeah, there were a number of things. There was discussion that the current program is very restrictive
Yes.
for the NIAs. You can only do it once a year. You have to use 2 dumpsters or
it.
nothing.
Watch it.
And watch it yourself, which they don't mind doing, but then what about the whole rest of the year? And some of the ideas came out to have maybe 2 community-wide dump days a year and have dumpsters all over that everybody in town could go and do free dumping, but that it would be more frequent, more accessible for when people were ready.
May I share my observation on having dump days?
Yes.
People hoard their property for dump day, which creates sanitation cases for us. We discovered when we were doing the team, whatever it was, where we went and we told everyone, put it to the curb it and we'll remove it.
Yeah.
Our sanitation cases were exploding all year. And when we would write people that go, I am waiting until April 18th for this program. And I go, you can't wait from November to April. And so it's nice to have that and to support our community that can't afford to do it. It creates hoarding. So just letting you know.
What if, and I'm just pulling this out, but what if some way the NIA could use some of their funding for that and have access? Is it per dump truck or per load? It's $75? How much is it? Like if you have 4 trucks that are all in a line with junk and they're all hanging out together.
So my pickup truck, I'm assuming that's what the $75 is. Yes. The dumpster is a whole lot more than $75.
Okay, but say if we did, if this would be the ideal, every 6 weeks or something, if you had people that were willing to, utilize their truck or trucks and go around their little 2-block area so people weren't hoarding, pick it up, take it to the dump, either being able to utilize NIA funds or utilize a coupon, utilize incentives, because partnerships, across the city were involved in wanting the cleanup, and I'm saying that could be a possibility.
Sure.
Where they're not hoarding because it
no,
happens
absolutely.
much
That
more
you have
often.
the 2 a year was where the hoarding was created.
Right.
I know that this city probably wouldn't do this, but I went to my mom's in Idaho, everybody goes to the dump almost every weekend because it's free. And it's not free, it's on their taxes. So every property owner is paying X amount of dollars for the disposal. And it was common when we'd go out and cut our branches, the neighbors cutting theirs, loading them up and hauling them away. It was like I don't know, like going to the store. You know, they say, hey, it's time to take the couch, let's take the couch. And I don't think our residents would be thrilled with another tax, but it was amazing to watch and what a clean city that is, but it's also a tourist city and all that stuff. So I don't know if we talked to Greenpoint and said, what would you charge to make it free?
Well, the other thing is that we talked about, Monique, it was at a number of the sessions, and her mantra, as I remember it, has been education, education, education. And one of the things that we talked about was that many people don't know that you can put one big item a week out if you have Shawnee County Trash. You don't even have to call in advance anymore, so there's no reason to hoard it at all. And even if there's been dumping, you take that mattress, you drag it down, somebody's got Shawnee County, tip it up against the dumpster, and it's gone. And that we're not availing ourselves sometimes of the resources that we already have.
Sure, I would venture to guess that many people who say they didn't know do know, because we've educated them. But if they're caught red-handed with the stuff, they say, I don't know.
Well,
Because
being the city councilwoman for Central, who gets plenty of those calls, I've educated a lot of people who honestly didn't know.
If you read any of your Facebook or your next doors, people say it 20 times a year. Like, you know, someone will go, hey, there's somebody illegally dumped. You know, you can put that in your trash and I'll take it. It happens more than 20 times a year. You're on the Oakland one. People share that all the time, that one big item can go out. And then somebody goes, well, they didn't take this couch. And it goes, because it's a hide-a-bed. They can't pick it up. It's too heavy. So you're right on education, but I can also, most of the people that lay that on me, they know because we've already been to their visit.
Well, that alone won't do it. And
Right.
and the deal is that partly when I get those calls, it's because they're mad.
Yes.
You know, and they don't want to have to, whoever it is doesn't want to have to pay for it being on their property. And so it's a matter of coming up again with changing the culture of whether you do it, keeping eyes on things, which,
Well, that's what they talked about too, keeping eyes on things. But I also think that we should be very cognizant of the information that we're putting out on wherever we can get it out. Did you know you will be fined this and this, you know, for if you're getting caught with illegal dumping? And at common sites that are usually dumped on, is there any kind of signage that we have out there right now?
Some of them have it, not all of them. I mean,
Yeah, you
most
can't
of them
anticipate all.
most of them are private property.
Uh-huh.
You know, you got a few streets. I think it's Overton. It's a great dumping area, and they put barriers up. And not Republican, 1300 block. We just put giant stones to block the street because the street goes to one house. That house isn't even occupied anymore, so it's all just jungle. And we took 7 dump truck loads of stuff off that street. So that's what we did. But yeah, there are signs. And then I recommend to property owners, put up a sign saying, you know, no dumping, you're being video surveillance. He goes, well, they're not. And I go, okay, it's a sign. I'm telling you that if I had that evil thought in my mind and I saw the sign, I'd go to the next lot at least. You know, I'm stopping you from being a victim, giving a suggestion. So,
well, and there was some suggestion combined with all that some of that dumping is happening because the people who are maybe charging somebody to take their stuff to the dump but don't want to pay the 75 bucks, back to your first point, or have found places where they can offload it, keep the 40 bucks and go on about their business.
I can guarantee you that's happening.
Yeah.
And I can even tell you some of the people doing it. And then we're trying to catch them. But, you know, they're not stupid. They know not to do it when we're out there looking for them.
Well, and community policing and community policing, I mean, that's where a partnership of eyes on, you know, okay, we're going to get rid of it once, but it's not happening again in my neighborhood kind of thing. And working on strategies, that's where getting the vegetation out of there so you can see when somebody's in the
That's
alley
gonna
dumping
be-
the stuff, and it all is tied
That's
together.
going to be vital.
I'm thinking that just the strategy for dumping overall is probably got enough moving parts to it that it could be
Separate.
one. And then the education, which could be I mean, I gathered all the topics I could think of on the list that I did, but there'll be more. It's not at all complete. But if we had a program whereby, let's just say that one could be through community engagement, they're in touch with the neighborhoods, you know, and there was like a weekly broadcast that's done that maybe our staff could help do or find, and we run it on Channel 4, but also figure out a way to get that dispersed through Facebook Live, and, you know, just figure out a sharing strategy to really get it out in the community. Maybe.
And I think we should continue to utilize community people to help deliver the messages.
Yeah, I don't know how many people saw it, but Christina's idea when we marketed the public input sessions was that to use neighborhood people to do it, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
Worked really
Because
well.
they feel a part of the process, and then they, in turn, go and tell people about it, and we can choose different people to volunteer.
Well, and with the assistance, thank you, Brent, of the public information staff too, we used the talk shows. It didn't just use our own media, but used the public media, and that really did make a difference with the news media involved promoting it, and the talk shows, people saw those things.
And I don't know how you feel about this, but I think, again, when we're talking about promotion, that is an entity unto itself, to make sure that we're capturing the markets that we need to, that we're collaborating. You know, can you imagine something where a average community neighbor sits with his city council person on a PSA and they talk about, hey, you know, let's work at cleaning up the neighborhood, or what are your ideas about mowing, or it just keeps that conversation going.
Okay, I'll put that under that education,
Yeah.
community connection
Yeah.
section. Looking through, Monique and LaToya turned in, and here's LaToya's training and public resource events on blight prevention. She even mentioned acquisition and maintenance of problem properties and productive reuse of properties. Let me see. Yeah, we can fit under here, one of the things that came up about rental properties was that maybe, and apparently the Landlord Association has done some promotion internally, encouraging people to simply raise the rent a little bit, or otherwise just include mowing in the landlord's duties, where you've got low-income tenants that don't or aren't likely to have a lawnmower and get it done regularly anyway. Or even flipping it, and, you know, if you do it, you'll get a discount, but have it included in the rent as a default. And that's, again, a community culture thing. If we do that, that could really solve a lot of issues. You tend to have more junk in the yard when it's overgrown as well. So that can go under the vegetable or vegetation and trash settings. Those are 6 big ones. Let's see. Oh, retail parking lots, that came up, and enforcement of people just dropping their cups and their napkins and their trash in retail parking lots. There were some comments that people thought that when the retailers weren't picking up, that it really spilled over into a sense of letting just trash accumulate in a neighborhood. What are thoughts about? Is that a priority?
I would think so. And
you guys do that?
When trash piles up enough on a commercial property, we cite them for sanitation. And we're not stopping and citing for 3 cups and a sandwich bag, but when it piles up along the fence line or whatever. But they're right, there's all sorts of businesses that you see that don't give a darn and just let people do that. So yes, we've cited plenty of commercial properties, but it's usually when it accumulates.
There had been some suggestions for some of these about encouraging and gathering up a citizen posse is the word that comes to mind. That's probably not the right one.
We don't want to use that word.
But people that would go around and simply would be in a supportive way, but would monitor,
Right.
kind of do a circuit. Neighborhoods have had people that did that, both for policing and code
And
before.
usually a part of their neighborhood watch or a part of their neighborhood, their NIA. You know, I don't know if, again, as we work eventually towards the promoting and education piece on all of this, you know, have that retailers, you know, we have this section for you, do reminders, do, you know, drops maybe through community engagement, and they can get their Vista volunteers to do drops on particular retailers we know that have a tendency for it. But I think it's something that should be added, because I can see where that would add to the overall problem.
I know that at least there used to be at least a limited group of retailers that met through Safe Streets on a security.
There's all sorts of retailers that meet for all sorts of different reasons. It's the
Okay.
ones that are neglecting probably aren't part of those teams. One of the concepts that I've just floated out occasionally, but it would fit right into this with the NIAs, is if they did find a group of volunteers that wanted to look through the neighborhood and then send a letter that's positive saying, hey, Jim's Icy Slush Machine, we've noticed this is going on at your property. As your neighborhood improvement association, this is why we would like you to take care of it. Thank you, God bless, we're not part of code enforcement. And
That's what we've been talking about
Yeah,
in Oakland.
because
NIA.
the one that, and it was one of the trainings I went to, and it's neighborhood association, they took it upon themselves that they go out and they look for the code violations, the housing violations, and they send this letter saying, hey, your neighborhood improvement association's noticed that you have broken gutters. We would like to encourage you to fix them, here's some resources, and then in 6 months, if those people didn't take care of it, they then send a little more firm letter saying, we'd like to meet with you. Can you explain to us why you're not doing this? And then turn it into code enforcement. If code enforcement had to catch it in the meantime, it wasn't them telling on the people. And it's working great for that neighborhood because they're actually talking to their neighbors.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And I thought, but a lot of the NIAs I've talked, they go, well, we don't want to be the bad guy. And I go, you're not being a bad guy. Your letter needs to be an encouragement of
Yeah.
why we want your property to look beautiful, to help the neighborhood, to lower crime. We can write 4 paragraphs of why it's justified, of why. And if the NIAs took that on voluntarily, you have, before Ward Mead fell apart, NIA-wise, they had 2 people that drove around and they'd give me a list of all the code violations. I go, they could have circumvented this whole thing and probably got 50%, 70% compliance on their own with, it's our neighborhood, not we're the government.
I like that thought, because again, what you're doing is you're having the neighbors look inward at themselves. Oakland NIA has talked about that eventually. The Oakland NIA is, just went through elections and has a much more active board. And so that was one of the things, along with the neighborhood watch meetings, where hopefully in the coming months, it was going to be those letters that you're talking about, particularly with some locations where you can get gas and food that I'm not going to name in Oakland, that there is continued problems with.
Sure.
Sending it in their name, and also eventually doing that with properties where there is concerns about drugs and receiving of Section 8 money. Also with looking at possible code enforcement. I really like that, And I like that as a possibility of putting that on the list and having, maybe CAC can be an involved part of that on, you know, would you all be interested in doing this, and then take it out to the NIAs and, you know.
And I would love to see like one NIA do a pilot program to see if it's successful. You spread to, our department will commit to whatever NIA wants to do that, to give them brief training and cheat sheets, because we don't want them to send a letter saying you can't have this and find out it's not a code violation.
Well, I can
Yeah.
check with Oakland NIA because our new vice president, Kevin Cox, really wants to start moving on it, like he's chomping at the bit
And
to move on it.
for the fact that there's no true follow-up of court, of document, having to prove it, et cetera, something like that can go very fast. You could actually address an entire community in a brief period of time, because you're sending a form letter that you just add your stuff into, mail it out, so the only time is to drive, identify, and mail the letter. There's follow-up in 6 months if they so elect to, or that, well, they should, or whatever time, 3 months, 6, whatever it is.
So we could make it a pilot program,
Yeah,
maybe,
I would be thrilled to
and
help.
promote it.
And that-
Look, NIAs, this
Right.
is what,
Correct, and that falls right into your community engagement, the community taking it over, not code enforcement taking it over.
Right.
And I would love to be
I
a
like that.
part of that solution. I just, so far, when I've thrown it out to different NIAs, I get the, not me, but that
We
doesn't
needed
mean.
to change the culture of how the city worked with the neighborhoods, as well as how they expected to, you know, who's going to own improvements in their neighborhoods. Monique, I have a question for you, and this was Latoya's comment by name, but it said, seek guidance and partnership with national agencies such as the Center for Community Progress. Is that a resource for like organizing training and helping neighborhoods to self-guide?
It is. I'll have to research a little bit more to tell you more specifics in regards to it. But yes, that's a potential resource.
Because that might be some other, I'm thinking that maybe this neighborhood self-help model is an entity of itself as well. And maybe related to that, with not only having these letters and teams, but more than once, the idea of having contests amongst the neighborhoods for the best looking neighborhood or the most improved neighborhood came out, and, you know, recognition for what you're doing. There could be more categories in that. Strongest neighbor to neighbor trash pickup team or whatever.
you know what you've talked about before about doing those little vignettes in the neighborhoods, those little sections about highlighting a neighborhood. So you could do something similar with the highlighting of the winning neighborhood, go in and do that little panoramic view of, you know, what that neighborhood is about in light, the winning neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And, you know, share it with, amongst our partners that are involved in the initiatives that we're trying to move forward to get out there in community.
Well, you know, and I don't know if that would be a separate one that we'd want to do right now, but what she's talking about is that on a bigger, from a very small scale to a big scale, we've all wanted people to live in Topeka instead of live out of town. And then when we market Topeka, all we're marketing is the to the high-end wage earners and the high-end neighborhoods. And so the idea of profiling our older neighborhoods, if we're wanting to attract people to them, and what a good deal it is, you can get a property at tax sale and fix it up for $30,000 and or whatever. We're not doing that. It's not part. Well, actually, in the Wall Street Journal last week, the article that went around, the couple that got the property through Choose Topeka had rehabbed it. And I thought it was wonderful to see that profiled, but we haven't been marketing these neighborhoods. And maybe you talked about that some with Matt as well as a reason for them to get involved in the code compliance. But if we actually started profiling all the range of neighborhoods you could live in and the affordability, that might help get people excited. Combine that with the, you know, recognizing neighborhood improvement and so on. Okay.
We're coming on 11:30.
Yep, but we're coming on having 10 things.
I know.
How about that?
Telling you.
So, profiling. Okay. Well, if people want to scan, I
Let me
think we're
just-
doing a good job of grouping these things.
Yeah, let me just reach out to Mike. Mike, I have a meeting this afternoon at 3:15 with David Bowden, the new, relatively new NIA president for Oakland. I'm going to pitch him this idea that you just gave.
Okay.
About-
I'd really appreciate that.
Again, I think with our new vice president that's come on, I think that it could be a win-win.
Because it's a NIA in Milwaukee, and for whatever reason, I can't get them to call me back. I've called them 10 times, and they're big. I don't understand how they have secretaries and full-time staff in these neighborhood improvement associations with grants, so I don't know how they got so successful with that. But I get a whole lot of, I saw the presentation, love the presentation, keep calling for those people, and they say they'll call you back, and they don't. Maybe that's a problem with success. You get too busy. I don't know. But I thought it was a terrific solution that allows the neighborhood to step up. And when I know my neighbors are the ones that are bothered, even with a night, I'm stepping up a whole lot more than when I guess my office cites me. I mean, you know what
Right,
yeah.
no.
I'd rather be encouraged than demanded.
And I love it possibly being a pilot program. I like that.
I think it needs to be, because it'll get just spread too thin.
I'm looking at Monique's list here, and her first two were to make sure we update the resource lists all the time and the social service lists and all of those others. And maybe, what I have dubbed number 3, where we were talking about vegetation and trash and mowing strategies, that really would include the repair strategies, people helping each other and so on. And so maybe we could put keeping all those, looking them over and making sure that the resource lists and the social service lists and also the opportunities for homeowners to, if there's like the NRP, what kind of incentives are available. We'll put those lists updated under that one, and community engagement is doing. The list that you all hand out, are those ones that you and community engagement do together? Do we have multiple groups doing the same thing?
Are you talking about resource guys or what?
Because you guys, I've always kind of bragged on you that you gave out good stuff, but I haven't read it lately.
I believe Monique's is different, but it's because Monique's is different needs. You're not using the same as me, are you, Monique?
It depends. Our list that we're sending out weekly is information that we're receiving from various local organizations around the community weekly. So I don't know if anyone in your office is looking at our list or Rochelle's list as well to see what needs to be incorporated.
So it's something where there could be, and someone in one of these had a collaboration of just getting like community engagement code just together to compare notes and get those resource lists. Monique was suggesting updating weekly, which I thought was, but when you said weekly, did you mean like the current event stuff that Rochelle is sending out now?
Well, it's not only current event stuff. There's information in there that really could impact an LMI family. So if I'm having issues in segment A, that means I can't, that causes me not to be able to buy gasoline to cut my grass. Maybe if I knew about all of these other resources, I could manage my budget a little bit better or know about other opportunities. So I think it's definitely something that someone on Mike's team can just take a look at ours and just grab whatever they think would be appropriate.
Yes, and we have, and we trimmed ours down so that it fit in an envelope, because it's pretty soon you got a book. But we should probably revisit it frequently.
Absolutely.
Just for the mere fact that there's new opportunities that poke up that Monique finds out about that Mike doesn't know about, or vice versa.
Well, maybe there's a way then for us to, having had this discussion, for you two to collaborate, and maybe with Safe Streets as well. They've always put out a pretty good one, but, and even the different social service agencies to make sure that even if it's not a master list, I know years ago at HCCI when we all got together once at Highland Park United Methodist Church because somebody got on their horse about some single mom with 3 kids who was getting evicted and there was nothing. And so we got everybody together and said, well, there's this and this and this and this and this, and then we kind of split it up. Like HCCI did the list of low-income housing and some different ones that had people that would pay rent money, but privately. Everybody told everybody who they were, things like that, just so we had a safety net. Okay, so we can figure out who ought to be in on that. That's syncing up the lists and then keeping them current. Those really help. Okay. Hope Liz is getting this all straight. My paper's pretty messy.
I'm thankful for the reporting.
Well, and so under the neighborhood, kind of self-help stuff would be where maybe there would be some more training for community engagement staff if you felt like that would be helpful. Anything else that jumps out at people that was kind of a different subject area? We can all look at this again. Just trying to stub in a starting list for us to then look over and flesh out after this meeting. Think it over. Oh, well, we had the training from Shawnee County Extension on the whole issue of noxious weeds. What's a weed? What's a plant? What's a tree? Is that?
I don't know if I ever saw that, or if I did. I was so inundated I didn't realize what it was.
Well, what I just said was a little bit of a combination, but I think my notes about it started with you.
I thought that you were saying there's a training out there.
No.
Oh.
But
No.
you communicated early on.
Sure.
That Shawnee County Extension had offered to do that.
No, ultimately that'll happen since I'm not going to send 4 when I'm trying to get 8. I'd like to send 8 to an in-service day. On the bright side, we just got a guy that accepted a conditional offer that seems amazing, and a second one yesterday that I think he's got to give me references, and he didn't give me references. So that's 2,
All right.
And then a bunch of no-shows, which I think they just applied to get unemployment and say I applied.
So that kind of training could be, for one thing, in a couple of the sessions we had, people identified certain things that need to be on this noxious weed list.
Right.
That aren't. So that's either state or local or both.
No, and the county will hear you. They'll listen to you when you say I think it should be, and they say no when they want to say no, and they say yes for whatever their expertise reason.
Right, but
Because-
if that whole issue of weeds versus native plants versus something that's going to be trees and shrubs in no time flat if we don't pull it up, that could be training for your people, but also for the public, right?
Well, I think that's going to be necessary as we look forward on the vegetation language change.
Right.
That's going to be a component that has to happen.
Yeah, so maybe that's part of the vegetation
Yeah.
initiative. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it'll need to be there also for the education piece for the public, just taking that
Right.
and educating the public as to what we're going to be pursuing or not pursuing.
You know what could be fun? This is down in the proverbial weeds, I guess, but I remember when I went to SEPTED training, it was the police department's training, but they invited the public to come as well. And so we all got to go through that training together, which was really a lot of fun. And NIA people and some others from different city departments the time I went, as well as probably 40 officers. Wow. Yeah, because everybody, are you still,
Do they still do SEPTED training? Is that what
for
you're asking?
everybody?
For everybody? I don't know if they've put it on. Well, they haven't put it on for
They
2
haven't
years
done
for
it in a
sure.
while.
Yeah,
And we're not putting on public training for 2020, 21.
But they were, I mean,
Yeah.
they,
Are
it
they- are
was
they
an
continu-
initiative for a while.
I can't tell you they're going to do it in 2022.
Well, the SEPTED training fits into all that vegetation stuff
Sure
too,
does.
really. Especially if it's one of our measures of success. Okay, and the junk cars, the partnership on junk cars would fit under the code stuff.
Partnership with,
Making sure that between especially now that we don't have our own impound lot that is full, theoretically, if you guys got the well-oiled machine going again, between code and police, we shouldn't have any junk cars anywhere, right?
Absolutely not. These people hide their junk cars and they understand the law and they put their junk car so it looks operational and it's not. And then I turn the corner on Tuesday and there's 9 junk cars in a yard that weren't there on Monday. So there's junk cars that show up all the time. We're towing so much that, what's the name of the company that they contracted with? They're full. Well, the contracted company is full and putting them out in the street. So we've towed so many cars that their lot's full and they have to go find a new lot.
Well, good.
Because we tow, so we do everything for these people. First we send them the notice, and then we leave a door hanger, and then we put a sticker on the car saying, hey, we're coming to tow it. Please call us. And we're still towing 10 cars a week.
Is the system working as well as it can, or should that be just a closed-end initiative to do more? I mean, we still get plenty of complaints, as I'm sure you know. So, and it came up from the neighborhood people. It
Sure,
came up
no,
when
absolutely.
we started.
One, what I tell the neighborhood people is expect what you tolerate. So that junk car shows up, you should be reporting it to us because we can't find them all. And then we will cite everyone that we can legally cite, and we're thrilled to cite them. How the ordinance reads out, I don't know. It's a mixed bag of how we go about it, because the person responsible for the car is the person who owns the car, not the property owner. And so that's who has to pay to get the car out and pay all the penalties and all the. Well, when they're junk cars and they're not registered, the property owner goes, I don't give a darn, take it. We take it. We're sending notice to the person that last ever owned the car 5 years ago, whenever they owned it. They go, well, I haven't owned that car since I sold it. So no money's being collected on those cars. And the expenses that we put out on that, we don't get back. Is there a problem in the ordinance there? Maybe. But then in return, you change that, you may change how effective we are.
Well, there used to be this push-pull between code compliance and the police, that you guys didn't want to do it on the street, and they didn't want to do anything that wasn't, so.
They do on the street, we do on private property.
But, I mean, you can do on the street also, because premises is included, and so I just wondered if.
It depends on how you interpret it and how you read it, and when the police department has agreed to do that, that's who's doing it.
As long as things aren't falling between the cracks, we know that.
I can't speak for what the police department's doing with their volunteer program and their towing. If they're towing, then that's great. Okay. And I know that we have problems, COVID or whatever, that sometimes you don't have the staff to do it. You know, they lost their volunteers for a little while because of COVID. They're back, so I'm assuming they're towing.
Well,
Yeah, I
just
think
check in to see
when-
if there's anything.
when the privatization happened with the lot, that improved some of that as well, because now they're calling that private tow company and the process is working smoother.
Yeah.
And then it makes it, we basically just need to report it.
Well,
right
I remember, because for a while it was, but our impound lot's full, and so that was stalling
Sure.
work. So I'm just,
Yeah, and we're towing as many cars as we're capable of towing and not being preoccupied with towing cars. We're towing a lot of cars every single week, and we're going out of our way not to tow them. We're begging the people not to let us tow their cars. And then when it comes to the police enforcement of their codes versus ours, now that we're under PD, I do have a voice to bounce it on. Hey, Lieutenant, this is your staff. You need to help me. And it's helping.
okay.
It's not always perfect. I can't tell you every patrolman's dying to go and mess with a car that's parked on grass. But when we reach a stumbling block, I have somebody to report it.
Well, with that then, Christina, from what we heard at the sessions, is it still enough of an issue that we should target it, or not this time and see how things go?
Not this time.
Not this time,
How
okay.
things go.
We're going here. Okay. And getting KDOT to mow is under the mowing one with the,
So I've talked to KDOT, and so has Mr. Jackson. KDOT goes, we understand that's our responsibility. We have not the staffing, the finances, and we aren't going to do it. Not that we don't want to do it. It's just like us. If we don't have anybody to mow, we're not mowing. They're saying we don't have the staffing or the equipment at this time, We've had it. We've had budget cuts. The governor says how much they can spend on whatever they got to spend. So they're aware it's their responsibility, and they will do it when we yell at them about a certain part, but
But we can do better than that, and that's why we're doing this initiative. And so if it's possible to do better than that with some sort of arrangement with the state, then we need to do that. And that's-
I know that John was going to be looking into that, but again, what would be the possibility of utilizing the Shawnee County delegation to push for something to happen? Because the mowing and the trash on 70 and 470 is atrocious. Now, you talk about an impression. When you come into a city, it's a terrible impression. I'm not looking at you.
No.
Because you know,
because
you
I
have no
know, and
control over
I know
it.
where I'm hamstrung on it. So you know, one of your inmate crews is actually walking the highways and cleaning that up. So what you think is atrocious would be 5 times worse without them. But on the mowing, we've all reached out and said, you got it. And they go, we totally understand. Don't have the staff.
Well, but it's a problem. And so
It
it's a
is.
problem. We're trying to fix that because you've got homeless people attracted to the places that look neglected as well, and that starts to
With all
add
the
up.
trees. So
So
how
should the
do we-
KDOT challenge be under our vegetation change, or should it be its own?
It needs to be its own,
Okay.
and it needs to have a hard
Agreed.
push.
Yeah. When you get to those agencies or the federal government, the only thing we can do is pressure them. I can't make the.
Well, you don't have to do it all. This is why we're all
No,
here.
that's what I'm like,
Yeah.
Pressure from a council member, pressure from a dignitary of whatever, goes a whole lot farther than, hi, I'm a director of some
That's why
department
we're
in the
here.
city of
And a
Topeka.
delegation.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, and I found great success with that when a council member goes, what can I do? And I go,
Yeah.
why don't you call them?
So
And they
if it
call
doesn't
'em.
need to be on our list because it's working, that's one thing. But if it's not working, then it needs to be on our
Yeah, and
list.
and
It's out of
if they're willing to
control.
give you that answer, then they're going to give you that answer. But they might also say, I don't really need whoever from the city bothering me. We'll go mow it. But the thing is, they're going to mow it today to hush you up.
Yeah.
They're not going to maintain it. So then that's where we have to stay on it.
Still on the problem
Is
list.
that something we can use Whitney for?
Use what?
Whitney? To
Yeah.
draft some kind of letter pressuring? I mean, I don't know, I don't think guilt works very much anymore at all, but, us being the capital city, wanting to attract, we have people coming in from all over, crossing over 70 every which way, and, this is what they're looking at.
Backing up a history of the city and the remodeling of I-70 as it went through downtown was, I think, $1 million project with a lot of promises to be made of how they were going to have the grasses maintained and the plants maintained, and that fence, I think, is $1 million fence. And I don't understand how it's $1 million fence, but it came to $1 million back then. And all those promises were made by the state that they will do it because it is the gateway into the city. As people leave their positions, agreements go away. So it's an agreement that needs to come back that they will maintain the gateway to our city through I-70.
We did the fences.
Yes, it's part of the grant, right, but it was $1 million grant, but they did a lot of that or we did the landscaping and they agreed to maintain it. It was-
Something. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well-
whoever hit that one on the 10th Street exit, somebody needs to be responsible
Well,
and untangle it.
Well, when you're on 70 and you're getting ready to go on the 3rd Street exit, right? There's these missing pieces.
Yep.
They look, that in itself should cause us to cringe as a capital city, honestly. All these things are part of the puzzle. And so, heck, let's go up and testify. So,
Well, we'll go ahead and make KDOT and their mowing and maintenance another item. That gives us 10. Maybe we can get, we're close to noon, but it feels like we've skipped through the various suggestions and lists that people have submitted, and hopefully we've got it's shaping up. So if our next steps can be to have Liz put together what she sees as these 10 objectives with some itemization under them, and have everybody on the committee review that list. What we need to do is clearly tag who would be responsible for it and whether we'd be doing it in-house or with some outside assistance or bidding it out if it's managing a training program or something like that, which maybe we can, if people can do that in between this meeting and the next so that we can visit with Brent about it or whoever to shape up the initiatives proposal. We would still have some prospects of taking it to council in December and
Yeah.
moving it forward.
Had
Some
a
of
couple-
these things will take work, and so if the initiative is to work on it, then,
A couple things that I wanted to circle back on.
Okay.
On the Karen Black possibility of hiring her, one thing within our policy, the city manager can hire a consultant of his choice, the city's choice, up to 50,000. So
Okay.
depending on what contract could be worked out with Ms. Black, we could do that without having to do an RFP. Now, we may desire to do an RFP, but if everybody, were to desire that she be the choice, that is a method that we could do in order to make that happen.
well, I don't know exactly how you do it, and maybe it depends on what the contract is, but could purchasing or someone check references on her?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all that stuff would be done. Yeah, all that would be done. I mean, I wouldn't just, we would get the information from her on what she's proposing to do. We have to develop a scope. There's a lot of steps that we have to follow to get it prepared and make sure she meets what we have put as our scope. And
But could that happen before our November meeting?
I can give it a shot.
That's where I'm going with it. I mean, if we're really wanting to bring this
Yeah.
down and have it ready, and if that one needs some
She
homework outside.
Shirley has examples of work she's done in other cities, and she could provide
I would think.
Yeah,
a
and
scope
she
based
has
on the
it
conversations
on
that
her
you've already
website,
had. And I believe her contact information was on
And so what do,
here. Yeah, I've got
Well-
her contact info here. I can reach out to her and see about getting a scope and a fee that she would, to see if we're in the ballpark. If it's over 50, then it could be a more exhaustive process that.
Or
Or
maybe
the partners.
we can look at that again. I mean, we've already had a lot of public input.
Right.
And
yes.
so if, and well,
Yeah,
not
it might
all,
just
we
be
have
a-
meticulous records on them. They weren't all televised or,
Right.
recorded, but it might be that we wouldn't have to do that step because of the amount of time we've already invested in gathering.
right, and my question would be, you can't exceed 50,000, but if other partners are coming on board,
That's true. 'Cause you've been
financial
working on
partners, yeah, come on board, could you still possibly, if everything checks out, do that part as a city and then have other financial partners come on board to add and still be in that realm of no RFP?
Or if you got them to do 100% of it, that's cool too, right?
I don't see an issue with figuring all that out. It's just a matter of spending some time doing that, and I'll reach out to her and see what I can find out.
I mean, if we could
Sometime
obligate
this
it
week.
before the end of the year with unspent staff salary money,
Yeah.
it's not like or whatever,
Well, yeah, a lot of the expense won't happen probably till 22, but that's all right. can
but we
still
could
figure it
encumber
out.
it.
We'll find a way to
couldn't
cover
we?
it.
Something else?
Oh, just that I mentioned to you prior to the meeting, we did come up with a definition of substandard. We don't have to go through it today.
Wow.
But I can email it out to you, and that be a part we
Okay.
discuss at the next meeting.
Okay,
And then, if it's okay, I'll look to have legal come to the next meeting to talk about their component of the process, just continue to move it. Legal?
I don't think we need that at our next, if we're trying to finish this planning,
Okay.
then I think that
Future.
we need to dedicate the
Okay.
time to that,
That's fine.
because then they can be part of that next step.
Okay.
Also, Councilwoman Valdivia, you are working on a couple other things you might want to share.
What am I working on?
Spanish language.
Oh, yeah, okay. Working with Monique on 2 dates in November to have public input sessions similar to what Karen and I did in the community. with our Spanish-speaking community. And so we should have that information out shortly because we know their input is also vital, but we're working on that currently. Am I
Good.
looking at something else?
No, that was,
Okay.
well, I wanted to make sure you talked about Karen
Right.
Black. I had
Right,
two things,
right,
and
right.
and then the
Right.
Spanish language stuff, so everybody
Right.
knew that you were working on that. Liz, don't we already have dates for November?
Right? I don't think that we do for this committee.
All right, well, we need to do that then. While we've got people here. If we can. Today is a Wednesday. I think just 3 to 4 weeks ought to work for us. What about the 10th?
Yeah. I'm open.
I'm
That's
out the
good.
10th.
Pardon me?
10th is police chief interviews. I won't be able to be here on the 10th.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's enough other staff, you wouldn't necessarily need to have me present, but
Well, I think it would be helpful.
that's fine.
17,
Do we want to wait that long?
11,
What about the
11.
11th?
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
And is that a holiday for us these
Yes,
days?
city holiday.
Okay, so the 12th?
I'm open.
I'm out.
Oh, I've got the social service grants that day.
Oh.
Those are the ones I've got booked.
Hey,
You could go Monday
We could go in the
8th.
afternoon though or something. Pardon?
What about Monday the 8th?
Monday the 8th. How does Monday the 8th look for folks?
I'm good in the morning.
I could do it 10 to 12.
Okay. I have it down if it's okay with everybody.
Neil, how are you?
I can probably make that work.
All right. Monday the 8th then. Great.
Okay.
I've got to run.
Okay. Well, I think we got a plan.
Yeah. Good work.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and Liz will have to find a location, make sure if
Right.
we can't do it here, she'll get us something. So, well, 47 pages down to 6 pages, down to 14 pages, down to 10 bullets, not bad.
In 2 hours
Yeah,
with extra dialogue.
we rock. We got the right people here. Thank you, everyone, including Monique. We'll get that computer fixed so you're louder next time. Thank you.
Are we adjourned?
We are adjourned.
Do you want that? Did you
Oh,
want that?
yeah, I was going to show, Mike got his award from the International Code Council for the Team Up to Clean Up project. Mike was the spearhead of that, and we put him in for this award, and he was selected. So, national organization to be on the map again.
All right.
When you want to talk about strategic enforcement and incorporating partners from outside government, if it works the way I wish it to work, it's exactly what you're looking at.
I think so, and part of what was in the dream side was to let people shop those elements rather than just have it roll around and get 100%. To have the option, a neighborhood option that they wanted the whole package, or a neighborhood option that they just wanted to do street numbers this year, or they just wanted to clean up a couple of lots, so that there was more ownership and much more of a chance that it would stay, that it would last.
And I think as we go through this process, we're going to have to try to figure out some way to keep in touch with community on what we're doing, because we know the majority of folks don't watch this.
Right, no, we do, but that's what we signed up for, was to try and get it put together,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
our idea is, again, to have them own it, and so,
But that's the whole intent.
Yep. keep your fingers crossed for this afternoon. I think David will buy, I think the Oakland NIA could be a pilot.
That's great.
Oh,
Well, and I'm up to 5 people that are noodling around about starting to get a Ward Mead Neighborhood Association
Good.
going again. It's stressful for me always, but sometimes you have to have a void to start over.
some of your problems, I think, that were hot before over there won't be as loud because it's kind of getting dead, or, won't be as loud. You had a lot of little political stuff going on inside the NIA that people just weren't willing to be part of.
It is so, that is one of the
Yeah.
most daunting things is how political it gets in the NIAs.
Yeah, it does.
It's very frustrating.
I mean, God bless them that they want to volunteer, but sometimes they want to own it.